Hello and welcome to this Brands Untapped session brought to you by the Toy Association. This is part of a series of interviews diving into how toy and game brands extend into other industries in creative, smart ways. I'm delighted to be joined today by Carrie Throckmorton, Marketing Director at Champion Brewing Company, and we are going to be diving into how the iconic board game Catan went on to have its own beer collection. Carrie, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. So I think to kick us off, if anyone is new to Champion or hasn't heard of you guys before we dive into the Catan stuff, talk us through who you guys are.
So we are a small craft. We started as a small craft brewery in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2012. We pride ourselves on being different. Our CEO was actually in a metal band for a long time. He was really, we try really hard to kind of be not necessarily off the grid, but alternative in a way. So when we started to do Catan, it made complete sense. We've done a lot of collaborations with bands and a lot of other companies that a lot of craft breweries don't necessarily think about doing. A lot of them think about just producing the beer, but we try to think about how the beverage industry can combine itself with somebody else. And over the course of the past, at this point, oh my gosh, this is year 10. Happy decade to us. I just realized that. Over the course of the past decade, we've grown exponentially, and now we don't just distribute in Virginia, but we can ship all over the country, which is pretty awesome. We started in a very small brew pub, then we moved to a larger facility, and in January we moved into a bigger one. So our production has gone, I don't know, tenfold, I guess you could say, which is quite exciting.
Amazing. And like you say, there'll be some people who, let's say it's a bit left field, a bit different for a beer company. So how did you sort of come to connect with the guys at Catan? How did this become a thing?
So Catan Studios is actually based in Charlottesville, not very far from our tap room and our original factory that was downtown. So Pete, who is one of the owners of Catan Studios, he was a regular. We spent some time with him, and then we started to think about how you can marry the two and make it so that it's a little bit more exciting to play the game. Of course, the game is fun to play in its own entity, but it's kind of interesting if you think about the resources that are involved in the game and how you can connect those with a product, be it beer or anything else. If you look at Catan's lineup, they have so many things. They have plushies, and they have pins, and they have posters, and they have puzzles, and they have so many other things. So their merchandise line was pretty expansive to begin with. And this kind of just seemed like the next best step. How do you incorporate a beverage to go with, a game that potentially you could be sitting there for 4 hours playing, which is really fun, but you might want a beverage while you're doing it, right? And one that's connected to the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's two areas I want to sort of dive into. There's actually, and you mentioned it there, the flavor side, and then the sort of the look of the of the drinks as well. And we'll get some of that up as well. But there'll be some people listening, scratching their head potentially thinking, Catan beer. How do you bring the essence of that game flavor-wise into beer? So can you talk us through, because I think the way you've done it actually feels very authentic and it does make sense. So talk us through that process of actually flavor-wise what you've done.
So if you think about the flavors, first we thought about the resources in the game. So you've got wheat, and you've got brick, and you've got wood, and you've got ore, and all these elements. And we were thinking, what do those elements represent? So if you think about wheat, what does that mean? Well, that one was really simple, right? Wheat ale exists. So that was kind of a check the box. So we started there. And then as we went further, we began to think about, okay, what is ore like? It's dark, it's a little heavier. So we went with the Schwartz beer. That made sense. When we got to the brick, brick is red, and it's got, all these tones in it. So we went with like an amber, a red ale, to kind of tie that in. The next one coming up, which we haven't released yet, is a lager, and it represents the desert, which is, the one non-resource, but it is the most important key part of the game, right? Because that's where the robber is. That's where that's where the start is. So we wanted to make sure we included that. When we were thinking about it, we were like, okay, well, there's technically 5 resources, but you can't forget about the desert, because without the desert, you can't really play the game. So desert, you think about dry and, you know, the need for quenching thirst, and that's what a lager can do. It's a lighter beer that is very thirst quenching. So our head brewer Josh really thought about what each resource was and how we could make it related to the beer, so when you were drinking it, it made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really smart. And then in terms of the looks of the cans, and we'll bring some of the artwork up when this goes out, but talk us
Mhm.
through, you know, how you've made that your own as well.
So for the looks of the cans, we thought about the game itself and how hexes are constant. You know, hexes are the shape, right? And if you look at anything that's Catan related, there's always a hex in there. There's always a sun in there. There's, you know, there's your goal is to, you know, build the longest road in theory, right? So what we did was we made the cans so that when all six of them are together, they're going to line up once all six are completed, and you'll actually have the longest road, which is really awesome. And also they all tie in together. There are these themes in the background of each of them. They all have a sun. They all have a bird, because a bird is very, you know, there's always a bird in Catan. Like if you look at the game, there's a bird. I've got a can behind me, there's a bird on that. And it was really just about incorporating the imagery of the game, but making it our own so that they're consistent across the board. So if you think about, for example, behind me, I have the Road Builder, which is the alt beer that came out. That's, you know, that nice amber colored ale for Brick. And it's got, you know, it's got a lot of red tones in it, but you can see the city in the background. And, you know, there's the sun, and there's one thing that's across all of them is that at the forefront, it's what we're talking about, but it's not in your face really big. It's just really pretty imagery, because Catan artwork in itself was really beautiful. And we wanted to make sure that we combined that when we made the cans, so that it felt connected to the game and not just, if you look at some of our other artwork, you know, like we've got shower beer, it's got an awesome cool duck on it and a bar of soap, but you know, that doesn't really work for Catan, right? You have to think about the product that you're working with and what you're collabing with and making sure that it's connected.
Yeah, yeah. Let's hope by the time this goes out, Catan haven't launched a duck-based extension for that game, and that comment, it does still make sense. And then what were they like to collaborate with? Because I imagine for them, obviously, this is quite a big, you know, it's a big brand for them moving into an industry like alcohol. How were they to work with? What was the process?
They're actually so there's, you know, of course, a chain of command. It's a much larger company than we are, right? So we started with Morgan, who is on their marketing design team. He's wonderful. He worked for, I believe, DC Comics for a long time, so he's got a really keen eye for art. So it was actually a really good, great pleasure to work with him as we did the process. So we would kind of conceptualize the art, draw it out. We had our friends from Electric graphic design based out of Oregon help us with the cans. So we'd sketch them and then send along, you know, get feedback back and forth. And once we got through the first label and we explained our process and our thoughts and what we really wanted it to look like at the end game, we went through Catan Studios and then Catan GmbH, which is their international that's based in Europe. It went up the chain, and then they said, okay, we get it. You know, like we're gonna like pull back a little bit. Yes, please send us everything. We want to make sure it's on brand, but we understand the process.
Yeah.
So it was actually, it was very collaborative. It wasn't just like we made this, look at it, check the box, yes or no. It was a back and forth, and it's actually really fun because they've also, you know, we'll shoot names off. You know, the one that's coming out next, the desert one, is called Robber's Delight, because we've got the robber somewhere hidden in the can, which is really fun. So we've kind of shot names back and forth and played with it. The Schwartz beer that was the ore was called Built This City. You know, there's a little play on names. So
yeah,
it's been very collaborative, which is nice. We've definitely had some collaborations in the past that are, you know, it doesn't necessarily feel that way. You know, you give them a product and they're like, yep, check the box, we're good. But this was definitely a back and forth and a very pleasant experience. We all got involved. Our CEO, Hunter, was involved. The Catan team was all involved. Kelly's one of their marketing people as well, and their PR. It's kind of just, and the tubers as well, they've been involved. I mean, everybody on the Catan team has really like embraced and this product and how to like give it out to the world and make it the best possible. So it's representation in the best possible way of them and us, side by side, versus one taking the forefront, which I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a really great process. And then in terms of anyone watching this thinking sort of what sort of other brand partners do you look at? How do you embark on this sort of stuff? What sort of brands do you think work well for you guys? What do you tend to look for in a brand partner?
So when we think about brand partners, first it's, from a business standpoint, you have to think about their reach, right? You know, who do they speak to? Do they speak to people that we don't necessarily speak to right away? And is their audience going to embrace beer? So we think about that. And then also, not only that, but is it a company that we want to be involved with? At any point you can be approached by someone and, you go through it and you say, well, maybe that's not the best fit for us. It would be great to collaborate, but this brand might not make sense. So there's a lot of thinking about, does it make sense? How can we make it work? We don't want to simply just put out a beer, for brand XYZ and people really shake their heads and scratch and say, I don't know why. Yes, people might be confused at first about the Catan, but it's explainable. And once you learn about it, it makes sense versus, another brand that you maybe would be like, I don't understand why you would make, a beer with like Heinz ketchup, what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
It's about the company itself.
Yeah, and on that, there might be games companies watching this right now, curious. So what do you think what would a game brand need to sort of be a good partner for you? What would you be looking for? Do you think, are there other, obviously kids games, maybe not, but do you think there's other tabletop brands out there and other games brands that could move into beer successfully?
I think so. So yeah, kids brands, not so much, you don't want to make necessarily like a Monopoly or Candyland beer. That's a little bit out there. But I think, for us, it's the elements of the game. So, like Dungeons and Dragons, for example, there are elements in that game and characters in that game that can be translated into a beer. Like what is the personality in said character and how do you make it into a beer? Or like War of the Rings is the board game of Lord of the Rings, right? Similar. There are characters there that have their own persona and their own personality that you can say, okay, well, this character is, a little dark and a little mysterious and, a little heavy. And this one's a little lighter and jolly and, full of fun. And you can actually translate that into beer recipes and, make something that standing side by side makes sense. The personality of beer is very complex, just like the personality of like a board game character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not necessarily
yeah,
something a simple game, but these more of these games that are journeys, if you will, within the game itself and the process of the game. It's similar to brewing beer. You start with one ingredient and you build upon it, just like Catan, Dungeons and Dragons, even like the whole Tolkien universe. There's a journey, right? And at the end of the day, the journey is you win the game and then you make the beer. So it would be really nice. It would be nice to collaborate with other games and brands that have that thought process in mind.
Yeah, well, there we go. Let's hope someone involved in Dungeons and Dragons is watching and reaches straight out.
Yeah, and then I've also always thought it would be really fun, just based on an age bracket. I'm in my late 30s. I've always had this dream, of making beer with Carmen Sandiego characters. Because and I guess it's a kid's game, but my generation, like, we identify with that, things like that, just characters and like the playfulness of old games that may necessarily not be relevant to, a current 10-year-old, but someone that's, a millennial or, a Gen X or a Gen Y might really see it and be like, oh my God, that brings back a really good memory. And this beer makes complete sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a playful collaboration that's resting on nostalgia and things like that. I think I think there's definitely opportunities there. And then obviously I want to touch on the beer side of this partnership is only one element. You've got some really nice other things going on. So can you tell us about some of the other stuff you're doing with the guys at Catan?
So with the guys at Catan, we've worked with we actually have this beautiful mural that we put on the side of our tap room, and it was done by a local artist based out of Richmond, Virginia. He calls himself the Night Owl. He's a beautiful muralist, and each mural, they're doing it all across the country. Each mural has a little hex on it with a little image, and once all the mural project's completely done, it's all going to go up into a puzzle form electronically or digitally And when you click on the puzzle piece, it'll spin it around, tell you about the mural, where it is, and how you can visit it. And then there'll be like a mural tour, which is really cool.
Yeah. No, very, very cool. And then before I let you go, just if anyone's interested, you said there's one more beer left to go. So when does that come out? How can people
There's actually
find this beer?
3 left.
Okay,
so
cool.
6 total, so 3 left. So the desert beer, the Robber's Delight, will come out at the end of August. Excuse me, April, not August. And
Cool.
then the one after that will follow in June. And then the final one will be August. And then all 6 will be done. And we've distributed them through our direct to consumer. Just in the first year, trying to get an understanding of what people want and, is this going to be successful? It has been very successful. So the goal is to, once we're done with all 6, move it out of our direct to consumer beverage club and let the world have it. So
Yeah.
it'll no longer be an exclusive, just for this small group of people. It was kind of like, like a focus group. Let's see if this is really something that's substantial. And by and large, we were shocked at the beginning. We were like, oh my God, everybody wants it. So now we just have to figure out how to make mass quantities of it.
Amazing. No, well, that's great. Well, Carrie, huge thank you for taking time out for this. And like I say, congrats to you and the team for creating something which I think is a really smart, interesting brand extension around a board game. Hopefully people watching can reach out if they think there's an alignment with a brand that they are close to, and we can hopefully catch up again very soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Billy. Have a great day.